Welcome to my presentation.
Hi, good day. My name is Malus M. De Los Reyes, a third-year BLIS student.
For today's video, we are about to discuss the Chapter 8, the historical research. A number of researchers, including some historians, have argued that historical research cannot be considered true scientific research because it does not permit enough precision and objectivity. In other words, it does not have the rigor of such research methods as experimental and survey methods. Nature and value of historical research. As used by the Greeks, history meant an inquiry designed to reconstruct past events, and, in a sense, historical research can still be defined as a scholarly attempt to discover what has happened. Historical research is also known as documentary research. The basic purpose of historical research are to provide a clear perspective of the present, and to facilitate planning for the future by identifying general principles applicable to recurring situations. Chronology. Chronology can be defined as simply the describing of events in order of their occurrence, a process similar to the older concept of the historical research. Historical research has two dimensions. First dimension is historical time, and the other one is historical space. Historical time, or the chronology, which takes into account the spacing of events and patterns, while the historical space, or where events occurred. Importance of historical research to librarianship. As Busha and Harter indicate, historical research can contribute to the OD of knowledge about librarianship. It can increase our understanding of how, when, and why past events occurred, and it can expand our appreciation of the significance of these events. Busha and Harter also quoted Harris, who stated that a clear understanding of the historical definition of the functions of libraries may well contribute to increased communication between libraries. Types of historical research. Sources of historical information. Primary sources represent the data which lie closest to the historical event. They are considered to include the testimony of eyewitnesses, or observations made with one of the other senses, or by some mechanical device. Secondary sources, also known as second-hand sources, may be considered virtually everything not viewed as primary. Evaluation of historical sources. In selecting specific sources of data for a historical study, it is critical that they be evaluated. The researcher should want to know if the sources are relevant to the study, substantial enough to be worthwhile, and competent. External criticism, or the gathering of external evidence, is done to determine if a source in fact provides authentic, primary data. It may be used interchangeably with textual criticism, and usually takes into account the provenance or origin of a document. Internal criticism. Having decided that a document or source is genuine, the researcher should then confirm the validity and reliability of its contents. It is generally more challenging than external criticism, and it too is often difficult, if not impossible, to achieve with absolute certainty. Basic steps of historical research. True historical research tends to resemble a scientific method of inquiry, or a problem-oriented approach. The hypothesis in historical research. Generally speaking, the most significant and useful results of any basic research lie in the generalizations or principles which are derived from the factual data. Consequently, historical research, as well as other types of research, tends to benefit from the incorporation of a hypothesis. Indeed, the hypothesis is a natural and useful device in this method. Collecting the data. The data collection technique for historical research, or at least for documentary research, basically involves putting together in a logical fashion the evidence derived from documents or records. This also involves comparing and reconciling of information gathered from one or more sources. Tertiary sources such as library catalogs and periodical indexes are routinely used to identify and access resources. The use of note cards, bibliography cards, multiple files, and so on can be quite helpful when gathering data from the resources. The presentation of findings. In writing the historical report, the researcher should take care to be objective and to preserve intellectual honesty. This is not to suggest that historical researchers are more prone to partiality than others, but to serve as a reminder that historical research is often rather subjective in nature, and thus relatively susceptible to researcher bias. The dual aspect of the historical enterprise, the effort to establish what happened and the attempt to explain why things happened in the way they did, explains the twofold task in historical writing. 1. To convey a sense of time or to show chronological development. 2. To analyze and explain the interrelationships of the event studied, to detect underlying patterns. Historical research conducted in library and information science has often been referred to as library history. Shiflett defines library history as a rubric that covers a myriad of topics associated with libraries and other information systems. Busha and Harter note that library history is commonly applied to an account of events that have affected any library or group of libraries, as well as to the social and economic impacts of libraries on their communities. In 1952, Shera pointed out that library history had evidence and excessive preoccupation with antiquarian detail and a provincial point of view. In 1956, Bartlett argued that there is never a dearth of library history, but its existence has been consistently marred by a tragic shortage quality. As far back as 1978, Kaiser pointed out that we are vastly better equipped today with sound, rigorous, scholarly understanding than we were a few years ago. After 40 years ago, Hagler pointed out, there is a need for more unified interpretations of library history based on comprehensive visions. Another area of scholarly work that some consider to be special type of historical research is bibliographical research. Persons involved in the compilation of systematic or enumerative bibliographies are concerned with the book as an intellectual entity. Their purpose is to assemble information about individual works into a logical and useful arrangement. Descriptive bibliography is concerned with the books as a physical entity or material object. Problems in historical research. A variety of problems are common to most types of research, but tend to be particularly important in historical research, including the following. This is where my presentation ends. See you on the next chapter. Bye.